The village council decided her fate in less than 5 minutes, as if her life were a sack of grain to be handed over, not a human heart still beating with hope and fear. Anaya stood in the center of the dusty courtyard, her hands clenched inside the sleeves of her faded shawl, her eyes fixed on the cracked earth beneath her feet. She had learned long ago that when elders spoke, girls like her were not expected to look up. The whispers had started weeks earlier, how she was too heavy, too slow, too unwanted, a burden her step-uncle no longer wished to feed. When the harvest failed and debts rose like floodwater, they needed someone to blame. So they chose her. As punishment, the headman declared, his voice dry and final, the girl will be married off to Raghav, the poor farmer at the edge of the land. A ripple of murmurs followed, some satisfied, some cruelly amused. Anaya felt her chest tighten. She knew Raghav by reputation alone, a quiet man, rough clothes, broken hut, no family worth mentioning. To them, this was justice, give an unwanted girl to a man with nothing, so both would disappear into obscurity. No one asked Anaya what she wanted. No one asked if she was afraid. That night, she packed her few belongings in silence. Each fold of cloth felt like folding away a piece of her old life, however small and painful it had been. The mirror cracked on the wall reflected a girl she barely recognized, rounded cheeks streaked with tears, eyes swollen from crying she tried to suppress. She had heard the insults all her life, how her body took up too much space, how she should be grateful for scraps of kindness. As she tied her hair, she whispered a promise to herself, barely audible, I will survive. It wasn't bravery, it was necessity. At dawn, she was sent off in a cart, the wheels creaking like they mourned her fate. Villagers watched her go, some with pity, most with indifference. No one imagined they would ever hear her name again. Raghav was waiting when the cart stopped. He stood tall but unassuming, his face tanned by years under the sun, his eyes steady and unreadable. He didn't smile, but he didn't sneer either, and that alone surprised Anaya. He greeted the elders politely, accepted the decision without protest, and then turned to her. You must be tired, he said simply. Not why are you like this, not why were you sent, just a statement of fact. It disarmed her more than cruelty ever could. His home, she discovered, was not the crumbling shack she'd imagined but a modest farmhouse, simple, clean, surrounded by open fields that stretched farther than her eyes could follow. She assumed they belonged to others, landlords who would soon come demanding rent. She prepared herself for a life of hard labor and silent endurance. The days that followed were strange, not because they were easy, but because they were fair. Raghav worked from sunrise to sunset, yet he never ordered her around or mocked her slowness. When she struggled to lift a bucket, he quietly took it from her without comment. When she cooked too much rice, expecting reprimand, he ate it with appreciation, saying, food should not be wasted. At night, he slept on the other side of the room, giving her space, as if understanding her fear without her needing to voice it. Anaya found herself confused. She had prepared for cruelty, for neglect, for hunger. Instead, she found routine, dignity, and an unfamiliar calm. Point one evening, while walking along the edge of the fields, she asked the question that had been pressing on her mind. Whose land is all this? Raghav paused, resting his hand on a wooden fence. Ours, he replied. She laughed softly, thinking he was joking. No, really. He looked at her then, a hint of something like sadness in his eyes. It is mine. Has been for years. He explained little more, only that his father had once been a respected landowner, that disputes and politics had driven them into silence rather than poverty. Raghav chose to live simply, letting others believe what they wished. The truth settled over Anaya like a slow sunrise. She had not been given to a poor farmer as punishment, she had been discarded into a life far larger than anyone imagined. As weeks turned into months, Anaya began to change, not in the way the village would have demanded, but in ways that mattered. Her shoulders straightened. Her laughter returned, tentative at first, then freer. She learned the rhythms of the land, how to plant, how to wait, how to trust growth that could not be rushed. Raghav listened when she spoke, truly listened, as if her words had weight. For the first time, she felt seen not as a burden but as a partner. Love did not arrive dramatically, it grew quietly, like crops under patient care. News eventually reached the village. Whispers returned, this time tinged with disbelief. How the poor farmer owned thousands of acres, how the girl they cast out now walked the land with confidence and pride. Some felt regret, others envy. Anaya felt neither. Standing beside Raghav at sunset, the fields glowing gold around them, she understood something profound. Punishment had become purpose, rejection had become refuge. The world that tried to shrink her had unknowingly placed her in a life where she could finally expand, and if this story touched your heart, if you believe that strength often hides where society least expects it, then remember to subscribe to this channel. Stories like Anaya's remind us that judgment is never the full truth, and the next story might change the way you see the world too.